Today's guest pointed out that many states have not defined human trafficking as part of child abuse, and this includes my own state of Georgia. You can go to the show notes at coolcatteacher.com/e224 to find out about your state. And stay tuned at the end of the show to learn more facts about human trafficking and what I uncovered when I did some research to educate myself. I know that usually the 10-minute teacher is about improving your classroom today. And really, this is about improving all of our classrooms because when innocent children are suffering, we all suffer. Kip and I have had long and heated discussions about whether we should even air this show. It's a very real possibility, as Kip said just tonight, that some people who are blissfully unaware of this problem will tune out in their anger, disbelief, and upset feelings. You will lose listeners, Vicki, Kip said, and I'm well aware that that will happen. But I'm convinced that we need to know how to recognize the signs. We also need to advocate for laws in our states to add human trafficking to the definition of child abuse. And you know, the best people I know are educators. And if there's anybody to care about innocent children, it's us. And the fact is, a lot of these kids are coming to school today, as you'll learn in this show. So here you go. It's not an easy one, but it's an important one. And I do care very much about you and especially about these children. Episode 224, Recognizing Human Trafficking, Their Recruiting Tactics, and What to Do About It in Schools.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Human trafficking. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, but it's there. And today we're talking with Ashley Burkett about how educators, specifically here in the United States, can take a stand against human trafficking. Is it a problem, and what can we do? So, Ashley, first of all, is human trafficking a problem that educators in the United States should concern themselves with?
Absolutely. Some reports have come out saying that there are over 21 million cases of human trafficking reported annually around the world. In fact, North America represents about 1.5 million cases out of that 21. So that's 10%. So we do have a problem here.
So what does it look like in schools? I mean, because some people would think, well, if somebody was involved in human trafficking, they wouldn't be in school.
There are definitely ways that traffickers are able to maintain a student's school attendance. They may be pulling a student and recruiting them directly from school and saying, hey, I have some money that you can make for me. Just come after school. They don't want to raise suspicions. Perhaps the child is frequently absent from school, but they are in an unstable environment. These are all different ways that they are able to remain in school without raising suspicions. Traffickers are very quick to hide their crime.
So you've talked a little bit of what it looks like. So what are we supposed to observe? You know, absences. What are some other things that we can notice to help us understand that a child may be at risk for being trafficked?
There are so many different signs and behavioral indicators of child sex trafficking and child labor trafficking. For sex trafficking victims, they may be frequently traveling to a different city, or they may be frequently running away from home. They may talk about being in a hotel, but they are a child, so they would not usually have access to a hotel. Another thing is unexplained absences that regularly occur if their attendance has dropped from they have regularly attended to somewhat attending to just frequently being away for 1 to 2 weeks at a time. They also may be inappropriately dressed based on the weather, malnourished, or have signs of drug addiction or physical abuse. And then another key fact to look for when you're looking for indicators of child trafficking in children, and I think teachers are at a great advantage here because they see a child on a day-to-day basis. Is the child sporting a new haircut that looks like that child definitely wouldn't have been able to afford? Do they have a new phone? Any sort of material possessions? Are they getting their nails done more frequently? Purchasing more and more new clothes, name brands? These are all signs that there is an income for that child that may or may not be legal.
What can we as teachers do? I mean, you can't really pick up the phone and say, hey, I have a student who doesn't have a lot of money who's suddenly, wearing designer jeans. I mean, how do we handle this?
As educators, it's important to develop a safe environment for that child so that the teacher may be able to confront the child and say, who have you been hanging out with? And if it's a male who is older, and I'm specifically talking about sex trafficking here because sex trafficking is the case type that you see most often in the United States. You have an older boyfriend, I've seen you hanging out. Like, what does he do? Where does he take you? What do you do for him? And maybe developing that relationship, that rapport with the student in order to get them to come forward. Another one is to understand the school's policies. Are there policies in place for reporting child trafficking to the Department of Social Services in that county or state? And as a mandatory reporter, certain states have a definition of child abuse that includes child trafficking. So if a teacher suspects any form of child trafficking, they may be required legally by the state to report it directly.
So you're telling me some states do not have mandatory reporting if you suspect child trafficking. That's what you're telling me.
Not all states, no.
Does that bother you?
It definitely bothers me, but I think that it's just a lack of awareness, and more states are recognizing child trafficking in their definition of child abuse, which is great, but it's really spreading the conversation, talking about what is human trafficking, and really getting people to understand that it is in our backyard.
Will you give us a list of those states? Because I know our listeners will want to know which states are not requiring mandatory reporting for suspected trafficking. I just can't imagine not including that. I don't understand, I guess. Are there things other students can do? Because, sometimes other students are in on conversations that we teachers never hear. What can they do?
Absolutely. A friend would be able to pick up on someone else's behavior more than an adult. But a lot of times what you can do as a student is I advocate for both educators and students alike to educate yourself on trafficking. Understand the local issue. The National Human Trafficking Hotline has statistics for a state-by-state basis. So you can look at your state and see how many cases of trafficking have been reported in your state so far this year. You can also research the companies that are around you. Where are you getting your nails done? As a student, where are you going to get your hair done? Are those people all there willingly? Are they hiring girls who seem like they're underage? Raise awareness. Join a local organization. But then as a student specifically, there are so many ways that you have to confide. It's about creating that safe environment for a student so that they feel ready to confide. If they notice that a peer might be suddenly not able to do as many things that they were once able to do, if they sound like they have a rehearsed line every single time, like, oh, I'm sorry, I cannot because, and it sounds, not like themselves anymore. Or if they start to pull away from the friend group and definitely are hanging out with an older group of gentlemen or an older woman. These are all signs that you can alert to. But I encourage students to be aware of your friend groups and be aware of what's going on, and then to stay safe online because most students meet their traffickers online.
Really? Most students meet their traffickers online. How?
Traffickers will have fake Facebook accounts or on Kik or WhatsApp. They may use Snapchat, Instagram, but they will lure students into talking to them, into a conversation and developing a friendship or a relationship with the students who are vulnerable, who crave attention, who crave that type of secure relationship. They will prey on that. And when the student then comes face to face with someone, it may not be exactly who they thought it was online, or it is who they thought they were online, but slowly they'll use that relationship to their advantage to get the student to do exactly what they want to do.
What can parents do?
I really think that parents should just be aware of who your children are talking to. It's so important to be actively involved in your child's social media. And I don't think that means you have to check every single day, but also understanding who are they developing relationships with, whether it's online, whether it's in person. Traffickers also may be outside of schools. They hang out around outside of schools sometimes. So just knowing who is in your child's friend group, knowing what they are doing online and who they might be connecting with, and then giving your child that sense of security in their relationship so that they don't feel the need to crave that attention elsewhere.
So, Ashley, you're obviously passionate about this. Why?
When I was in college, I traveled to Malaysia and I saw firsthand just how devastating the effects of trafficking are on a family. When I returned home, I went to different organizations and their events, and I listened to countless stories told by these women who have been just absolutely devastated physically and emotionally and taken advantage of. And I just hate to see the way that we hurt each other. And this is such a broken part of our society, and it's hidden, it's hard to find, and more people need to know about it. And I feel very strongly that we should be having these conversations.
Where are some resources that can help us combat this problem?
Yes, absolutely. I have plenty of resources. As I said, the Polaris Project, they operate the National Human Trafficking Hotline, which offers a variety of statistics based on state and national levels. They can break down what sort of trafficking is occurring right now, whether it's sex trafficking, where is it happening? If it's labor trafficking, what industries are these in? For teachers, there's specifically a resource, Human Trafficking in America's Schools. It's put out, you can access it at the National Center on Safe Supportive Learning Environments. You can check out the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. They have plenty of great information. They have infographics that you can hang in a classroom, but they have indicators of human trafficking, risk factors, what does it look like, and myths and facts. So those are a couple of great resources that I would recommend that are U.S. specific.
Wow, I just wish we didn't have to talk about this topic. It is very uncomfortable and not something that I like to talk about, because human trafficking is an estimated $150 billion industry. The fact is, anytime there is a crowd of people with lots of disposable income at high-ticket events who have the attitude of wheels up, rings off, we will have innocent children who will be harmed unless we make this a priority. It can be concerts, conventions, and major sporting events wherever they are held. A study from the University of Pennsylvania said that about 300,000 youth are at risk each year of being sexually exploited for commercial uses, and many are as young as 5 and 6 years old. Now, I don't even know how to get that out. You know, the last time I checked, slavery was outlawed here in the United States many years ago. But if you study history, you'll find that there were many uncomfortable things people didn't want to talk about. People didn't want to talk about slavery, even during the Civil War. It was an uncomfortable topic. People didn't want to talk about what was happening in Germany during World War II. It was an uncomfortable topic, too, and it wasn't very popular before the war to even criticize Germany, because there were many fans of Hitler, even here in the United States. You know, in 2017, the United States was swept with the Me Too campaign. And I do admit that I am a Me Too. I wish I wasn't, but the things that I dealt with in my Me Too issue pale in comparison to what some of these innocent children are dealing with on a daily basis. And that's the thing about social media. It's social me, M-E. And a lot of times we don't tend to care unless it's me. Do we care about them? Do we care about her? Do we care about him? All I know is to bring attention to this issue. I know that the statistics are showing that a lot of these kids are in our schools. There is somebody listening to this podcast today that has someone in their class today who is, for all practical purposes, owned by another human being and being exploited and being sold for either their labor or for sex. And that is the fact. I wish we didn't even have to talk about it. I wish we didn't have to air this show. I wish this wasn't even a topic and we could just be happy all the time. But I'm going to tell you something. As happy as I am and as enthusiastic as I am, and if you've listened to this show for any amount of time, you know that I tend to be a happy, enthusiastic person. But our love of children has to come ahead of our feel good. And this is something we need to discuss. And so I hope, even though it's uncomfortable, that you'll take the time to talk about it with your colleagues. What do we do if it happens here? What are our reporting requirements? And if we don't have any reporting requirements, advocating for those, because we really do need to have them. There's no easy answers here, my dear friends, but I know you're remarkable educators, and I'm going to put it out there for you. We'll see what happens. And if even one child is rescued, then, you know, it was worth maybe losing a few listeners. So a little longer than 10 minutes, but it was worth it today. I hope you learned something.
Thank you for listening to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast. You can download the show notes and see the archive at coolcatteacher.com/podcast. Never stop learning.